Hey everyone, welcome back to another CollectA review. Today we're taking a look at not one, not two, but 4 feathered T-Rex figures. Like I said in my last review, it's a little slow around here, so I'm going back, taking a look at some older figures, you know, feeding the YouTube algorithm and such. But these figures right here, I've been wanting to cover for a long time. You know, I was thinking about doing separate reviews for them, but I figured it was easier just to do all 4 at once. Now, there's actually 5 figures in this feathered T-Rex family that CollectA released over the last few years. The newest one, which is the Roaring 2019 version, it's the same size as this Deluxe, actually had that figure in my hand, and I passed on it. It's a good-looking figure, but I didn't feel like I needed to get another one because I actually like the older Deluxe one a little bit better. That one had less feathers. It just had like, made of feathers and some feathers along the back. I know over the last few years, the big hype about T-Rex being feathered has kind of died down, but it was really cool when CollectA released these figures a few years ago. You know, they're always on top of what's current going on in the paleontology community. And what was even weirder about me having that figure in my hand, there's actually a store in the US, near me that actually carries CollectA figures, which is also kind of weird because, their distribution in the US is really not great. So now the large Deluxe Rex right here, this one came out in 2015. This figure is actually retired now, and it's quite sought after and is definitely my favorite out of the bunch. It's just such a beautiful looking figure. The next one is the Standard Edition. This one came out in 2016. That one is also retired. And then we have the Corpse, which also came out in 2016, and we have the Feathered Juvenile, which came out in 2014. So with that quick history lesson, let's throw these figures up on the turntable and jump into this review. Alright, let's start with a nice 360-degree view of the feathered T-Rex family. I think this is the most crowded the turntable has ever been for any review. All these figures look absolutely great. This is peak CollectA right here. Beautifully sculpted figures that are nicely painted, and they don't kill your wallet. The Deluxe one, I think, was around $30 when it came out. The Juvenile was like between $5 and $7, and the Corpse and the Standard one were around $10 each, and that is a heck of a bargain for the quality you're getting with these figures. I absolutely love the Deluxe version. I think it's one of the best sculpted CollectA figures of all time, and it just has such a shelf presence with that bright green feathering with the red. It just really pops, and it kind of reminds me of the I don't know if any of you have ever read the novel Primitive War. It just reminds me of the father T-Rex. The Rexes in that novel were feathered and they were covered in green feathers, so that T-Rex really reminds me of that. It's probably why I like it a lot. The Corpse is great. It's just such a gnarly, gruesome looking thing. CollectA does some great corpses, and I love Dinosaur corpse figures. They're great for dioramas, and I take a lot of photos of my Dinosaur figures and post them on Instagram. Shameless plug. Link to my Instagram is down below in the description. And like I said, I love corpses so much, I plunked down $105 for the Namu Parasaurolophus corpse, even though I hated myself for doing that. But we'll get into that when that figure eventually comes in. And I love the proportions on the Standard version. I wish they would upscale that to the Deluxe size. I think it would just be like an absolutely almost perfect looking feathered T-Rex if CollectA did that. And the Juvenile is a great touch. It just shows you all the differences that T-Rex goes from being a chick growing up into an adult. So all 4 of these figures are just absolutely great looking. Alright, let's do a few measurements. First up is the Deluxe T-Rex with that incredibly long tail. If you measure along the curve of the neck and tail, figure is about 15.5 inches long, and from the top of the base, about 5 inches tall. So T-Rex in real life was estimated around 40 feet long. So I'll put this figure in the 1/30 scale range. And let's move it to the back over here. Next up is the Standard T-Rex. This figure is 9 inches long and about 3 inches tall from the top of the base. So the Standard Edition with that 40 feet estimate is around the 154 scale range. And next up is the little Juvenile. That figure is about 3 3/4 inches long and about 1.5 inches tall. Couldn't really find any crazy size estimates for the Juvenile, but it does look good next to the Deluxe version. And then the Corpse is, if you measure it along the curve of the neck and the tail, it's about 10 inches long, so it's roughly around that 150 scale compared to the Standard Edition. They're pretty much similar in size. It's just a little bit longer. So let's move on and review each of these figures individually. All right, first up, let's take a look at the Juvenile T-Rex. This was the first figure in their feathered series, and it's so nice to see, companies doing juveniles of their figures. I know P&SO did Tyrannosaurus, which is technically a juvenile T-Rex, but CollectA was one of the first to the punch, and they did a great job in this figure. All the feather detail came out fantastic, and let's take a look at the head right here. You can see the eyes are painted in black. All the eyes on this figure are painted in black, but they have a nice glossy look, so it does give a little bit of a lifelike look. You can see the little teeth are nicely painted on here. The snout has a little bit of a pinkish color, then goes into a brown. They have all these red highlights on the back of the head, and then it transitions into that green coloration from most of the feathering. You have a little bit of a white stripe right here. There's a lot of cohesion with the paint apps on these figures. All the T-Rexes, look like they belong together. They all have that red, green, and brown. But the Juvenile actually has speckling of brown and brown striping on the tail. Maybe give it like a baby pattern. And it's just really cool to see all the changes T-Rex went through from hatching from an egg and growing up to a big, bulky powerhouse of an animal. They're quite nimble looking as juveniles. The front arms are nicely sculpted. You got a little bit of paint on the claws right here. Not perfectly applied, but they're really tiny, and these figures are hand painted, and that's pretty much the best they can do. The legs are really thin and spindly. Now, I've heard some people say there is some, let's get the camera to focus in on this figure, there's some warping issues with this figure because the legs are so thin. It's kind of a soft plastic that over time the figure would droop. I've had this figure on display for years, and mine hasn't drooped, but it is something to be aware of. And then looking at the feet, you can see the toe claws are nicely painted. You have a little bit of gray paint for the few scaled parts on this figure. And then looking at the base, you can see some nicely sculpted detail on the rock base the figure is on. I miss the bases on CollectA figures. I'm probably going to say it a few times during this review. Lately they've been sculpting their figures without bases, and I just don't like the oversized feet that they're giving their figures. It makes them look really weird. And then flip it over. There it is right there. The telltale sign that you have a CollectA figure, the absolutely explosive cloaca area. Look at all that matted in the feather right there. I actually quite like it. I know I always give them crap about it, but I do like their messy cloacas. It's always kind of fun to look at. And look at it from the top, you can see more of that brown speckling on the brownish portions of the feather. So yeah, a really, really nicely sculpted figure. You can see a little fern sculpted on the base, the underside of all the copyright information. So yeah, a great little feather T-Rex figure. It just goes perfectly with all the feather T-Rexes in this little family. And next up is the corpse. I love the corpse that CollectA gives us. They're so gnarly and gruesome looking. Just look at all the nice gore on this figure. Just, shows you the brutality. Even T-Rex was not invincible. This poor thing probably got taken down by another member of its species, probably a territory dispute, but it's really, really cool looking. Look at that. The eyes are closed on the head. You can see, a little bit of shrink wrapping on there, but that's probably due to decay. The teeth are nicely painted. If you look at the figure from the front right here, you can see gravity pulled the tongue down to the ground, and there's some nice detail inside the mouth area. And then you can see a chunk taken out of the side of the head right here. You got that beautiful red mane, and they have all that bright green feathering with that white stripe that all the figures have. The throat has been ripped out. You got some nice details right there. You actually can see the esophagus right there. That's a great, great touch. And you can see some scales underneath the throat. One of the hands have been ripped off. Kind of reminds me of the T-Rex from Dinosaur Revolution when poor thing got its hands ripped off. And then the rib cage is totally busted open. You can see all that nice gore in there with the organs and the ribs exposed. On the side right here, you got all that copyright information. And then down to the abdomen, you can see the intestines. Nicely sculpted. A lot of nice blood and gore. You see all that brown feathering is nicely sculpted. You actually have claw marks from the hind feet on the thighs, and then turn the figure around from the back. You can see a bite mark from T-Rex jaws right here. They almost look like claw marks, but that definitely looks like a bite right here. And then going down to the tail is curving back from rigor mortis. And let's get the camera zoom out. Same thing with the neck. The neck is bending back from rigor mortis, and you get the legs in a nice death pose. So yeah, really, really cool looking figure. I hope CollectA keeps giving us corpse figures of different species. They just look absolutely great in dioramas. And next up is the standard version. I absolutely love the proportions and pose on this figure. Like I said earlier, I wish they would upscale this to the deluxe size. I think it would just be pretty much a perfect looking T-Rex. Like, my only issue with this is I wish I had more of a pot belly. It doesn't look like they really sculpted the gastralia. Those are the belly ribs. You know, if you look at the Safari feather T-Rex, which I'll take out later on for comparison, that one has a big part belly. It makes you show you how big and bulky T-Rex is. But other than that minor complaint, absolutely love the proportions on the standard version. And zooming in on the head, there's some black markings. You can see the fenestra is a little bit exposed. It's a little bit shrink wrap, but it's really not that bad. Eye is painted in black. It's nice and glossy. Teeth are nicely painted. The tongue is painted in a very dark pink color. It's a matte color. There's no real gloss coat on there, but it doesn't look that bad. You get some nice detail for the roof of the mouth. The underside does have scales. Same thing with the belly. And then you get a little bit of red right behind those black markings. No bright color on the mane behind the head. Maybe this one could possibly be a female. Then you have all those nice feathers going into that green. Then you have that trademark white stripe, which all the figures in this series have. Here's some more white feathers along the forearms. The forearms are sculpted nice and puny, and you can see the hand claws are painted in black paint. And then going down to the main body, you can see a little bit of that brown molting that the Juvenile figure has. So maybe this one you can consider an adolescent as it's transitioning into its adult colors. And then on the back right here, you can see more of those feathers. You can see a little bit of the hip right here. Hind legs are nice and muscular looking. You know, one thing, the way CollectA sculpts these standard T-Rex figures, I always feel like this part right here looks a little too long, but it's not that bad. You know, you're paying $10 for this figure. I mean, what do you expect? It's a great looking figure for $10. The toe claws are painted in black, and then you have a nice base that the figure is standing on. You have some leaves sculpted in and footprints all over. It has a nice texture. Looks like it's walking across a sandy beach. And then going down to the tail, you see more of those black striping. And the tail on this one is much more proportionate looking than it is on the deluxe figure, which we'll be looking at next. And here's the figure from the other side. You can see more of those really large belly scales. So yeah, I love the sculpt and proportions on this one. I just hope someday they'll just upscale it to a deluxe size. And now let's move on to the deluxe version. This is my favorite out of the four. It's such a hefty figure. It has a really nice premium feel to it because of the heft of it. And it's a nicely sculpted figure. And, you know, CollectA is very budget friendly. This figure was around $30, and it's a sizable figure. You know, if you got a figure this size from PNSO, you're definitely going to be paying around that $60 price point. So that's the best thing about CollectA. They're very budget friendly and easy on the wallet. Now for the head on this figure, it's a nice sculpted T-Rex head, a little bit shrink wrap. You can clearly see the fenestras. The eye is painted a glossy black color. You got all that black markers on the top of the snout and around the orbit. The teeth are nicely sculpted and painted, and you can see the jaw on this figure is articulated. CollectA is not the best when it comes to their articulated jaws. I always say Papo is the best until I saw that horrendous looking Protoceratops. Seriously, that thing looks like a Schleich model. But, you know, it works pretty well on this figure. It's definitely better than like the articulated jaw on CollectA's Tyrannosaurus. And then opening up the mouth, you can see that the tongue is nicely sculpted and painted. It's painted with a matte pink color. And there's actually two versions of this figure. I think there's another one. The gums are actually more rounded. I think that was the first release. These look a lot better than the first release version. I think if you go on the Dinosaur Toy blog, the review of that figure, I think, has the rounded gums, and you'll see what I'm talking about. It was really off-putting. So I'm glad they did a running change on that. You can clearly see the ear canal sculpted. And looking at the figure from the front, you got that nice T-Rex binocular vision. You can see the nostril sculpted in, highlighted by teal blue. And then turn the figure over. Let's take a look at the underside of the jaw. You can see a lot of large scales and some white paint. And then going to the top of the head on this figure, you can see that bright coat of red feathers, and it slowly transitions into that teal blue. All the feathers on this figure are really nicely sculpted. A lot of nice work on this. And then there's a nice white stripe at the base of the neck that starts above the shoulders, going down to the front arms. They're sculpted nice and puny. The hand claws on the front are painted in black. You have some white feathers along the arm, and the arms are scaled a little bit. Like this figure is pretty much like 85% covered in feathers. Then turn the figure over, you can see some large belly scales. Can't really turn over too much because it'll be blocked by the base. And then going down, you can see more of those large belly scales, and then it ends right at the base of the tail, and there it is, the dirty CollectA cloaca. And then going down to the main body, you can see, all those rest of the feathers are sculpted in brown. There's a nice wash in there to bring out all that feather detail. Get some nice muscle definition along the thighs. Going down to the front legs, you get some nice scales. The legs look a little bit long and stiff, but it's part of the charm of this figure. It's not the perfect T-Rex, but it is a really cool looking figure. See, the toenails are painted in black, and it's on a nice textured sandy looking base. And then going down to the tail base is nice and thick and muscular. Even viewed from the top, has a nice thick base to it. Even the gut region is nicely thick and sculpted. Very bulky looking figure, and they have all that nice fine scale detail going all the way down to the tail. Now, the one thing I'm not a big fan about this figure, just the tail looks like it's a hair too long. It just kind of looks a little bit odd. Not used to seeing tails that long on T-Rex figures. But all in all, like I said, this figure has a lot of charm and personality, and it's a big favorite of mine. Moving on with comparisons, let's compare it with some other CollectA Deluxe theropods. Here it is with their awesome looking Carnotaurus. And next up, here it is with their Ceratosaurus. And let's do a couple of potential prey items for T-Rex. Here it is with Safari Limited Triceratops. And I don't think we'll be able to get the Edmontosaurus in on the same shot. So let's move the Triceratops over. Here is Safari's Edmontosaurus. Good news, CollectA actually has Deluxe Edmontosaurus and Triceratops coming in 2022. So those two figures should pair beautifully with these figures. And let's do another wild theropod. Here it is with Safari Limited's Giganotosaurus. And now let's do a couple feathered Tyrannosaur figures. Here it is with PNSO's Utyrannus and Safari's Utyrannus. And next up here is Safari's feathered T-Rex, which is an amazing looking figure. For years now, that T-Rex has stood pretty well, and now I guess warping has caught up with it. Just gonna have to readjust it with some hot water. And here is the Dino Dana version of their feathered T-Rex. And here it is with the Papo Grandstanding T-Rex. And here it is with the still awesome, even though it's over 20 years old, Batat T-Rex. And I really gotta start doing some Batat reviews on this channel. I have a bunch of their figures, so hopefully maybe the next month or so I can get a couple of those up. And lastly, let's compare it next to PNSO's Tyrannosaur family. Here it is with Wilson. Here is Logan, the juvenile, and here is big ol' fat ass Andrea, the female, and she's so big she blocks out the standard one and the CollectA juvenile figure. So yeah, there you go. If you want to do a T-Rex family of two companies that are competing for your dollar, I really like CollectA's. PNSOs are very accurate. The worst thing about them is the price point. These two right here are $60-something figures, and Logan, is extremely tiny for a $40 figure from PNSO. But hey, you have options, and as always, options are good. So final thoughts on CollectA's T-Rex family. They're good figures. They have excellent value. They're not too expensive. They're nicely painted and beautifully sculpted. And who doesn't love to have a dead dinosaur in their collection? There's so many diorama and display options when you have one of those. Now, like I said, to begin the review, this one right here and the standard version, they're both retired, so they're kind of hard to track down if you're trying to add these to your collection. But there is a Roaring Deluxe version without the base that is still currently available from CollectA, and the Juvenile and the Corpse are also still available. I'll leave a link down below in the description to Everything Dinosaur and Mini Zoo. Those are the two places I get most of my CollectA figures, so if you want to add these to your collection, just check out those two links. So that would do it for the review. While I was filming this, I checked my emails. Looks like a lot of the stuff I ordered should be in Monday or Tuesday in the next couple of days. So I should have a bunch of new reviews next week. So be on the lookout for those. And as always, if you're enjoying the content on this channel, show your support by hitting that subscription button just below the video. Each subscription helps out the channel tremendously and is greatly appreciated. And I'll see you guys for the next one.